Welcome to episode 424 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Meyers, screenwriter and blogger at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I am interviewing screenwriting guru Christopher Vogler, who wrote one of the most impactful how-to screenwriting books ever. It's called The Writer's Journey. Definitely check that out if you get a chance. He's a super smart guy and really has studied structure and character and has a lot of great insight into how all of this works in a good screenplay. So stay tuned for that interview. SYS's six-figure screenplay contest is open for submissions. Just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest. The early bird deadline is March 31st, so just a little over a week. If your script is ready, definitely submit now as you do save some money. We're looking for low budget shorts and features. I'm defining low budget as less than six figures, in other words, less than $1 million. We've got a lot of industry judges reading scripts in the later rounds. We were giving away thousands in cash and prizes. I had the winner from 2020, Richard Pierce, on the podcast in episode 378. He won the contest. It was introduced to one of our industry judges, Ted Campbell, who I also interviewed on the podcast on a later episode, I think 280, who took the script over to Mara Vista and got the film produced. And just a couple of weeks ago, we had one of our semifinalists again from 2020 get his screenplay option. So we're getting a nice little bit of traction for this contest. Anyway, if you do want to submit to the contest or just learn a little bit more about it, just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/contest. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode 424. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Again, just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I am interviewing author and screenwriting guru Christopher Vogler. Here is the interview. Welcome, Chris, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
No, this is terrific. Glad to be here.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in St. Louis, first in the suburbs, so I was about 10 or 11 years old. Then my dad bought a farm. We moved out west of St. Louis into kind of Mark Twain country, and north and west of St. Louis. And, that isolated me, but it threw focus, I think, on media. So TV and movies became important to me because I was all alone out there on this farm. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to tear the screen open and jump in there. I just felt like this is for me. I don't know why, but I just am lit up by it. And certain genres and music, actually, I could feel things in my body. And I just knew I had to be part of this somehow. So I was always following that trail. And, thought all along, there must be some kind of a algorithm, we would call it today, some kind of patterns or a way people have of creating these magnificent experiences for me, that just thrilled me so much, especially the mythological stuff, the adventure stuff, that science fiction, all those imaginative things really lit me up. And so I followed a trail. I went to journalism school first at University of Missouri, and then went into ROTC during the Vietnam War and just sort of spun the wheel of fortune. And they sent me out to LA to work on doing documentary films for the Air Force, for the space program and the space and missile and, super secret technology and, really cool stuff. And so it was a good way to get out of Missouri and out to the West Coast. And then that led to going to, on the GI Bill, I went to the USC Film School. And that's where I started looking hard for this algorithm, for the pattern. How do they construct these things? And there really wasn't anything. I mean, there were very few screenwriting books at all, and they didn't really talk about the theory of the thing. It was more about how to format it and, basic stuff. So I was in a class and I saw a weird film called The Boy with Green Hair. And I said to the professor, there's something kind of mythic about it. I don't know what it is. And he said, well, if you're interested in that, then go to the library and get this book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. So I got it and, sort of flipped through on the bus on the way home. And by the time I got home, I was like, oh, that's what I was looking for. So that really, blew my mind open and gave me the thing I was looking for is like, how does it work? What is the kind of inner TikTok of it? How does it relate to human psychology? How does it manifest in the body? All these things I'd been wondering about. And then I also was lucky in that film school environment to hear about this thing, reading scripts for a living, and that there was a story department, and that there was a world of, analyzing and helping the studios shape the things and all of that. And that seemed to work for me too. So I followed that trail, got into working at the studios at Fox and eventually at Disney, and had a good career doing that, and sort of laddered my way up and branded myself through this hero's journey thing that I had gotten from Campbell. And the main turning point was at the time they were developing Lion King at Disney. I formulated it into a memo form because that's how they communicated. That's how Jeffrey Katzenberg and the other executives put out these dictates. They would sort of, get this big megaphone and, oh, this is how it shall be. And they were famous for that. So I put it in that form and said, there's this thing, the hero's journey. Campbell talked about it. And I think there's something here for film, for telling commercial stories. And that thing went viral before there was any internet. I mean, this is the time of Xerox machines and fax machines, So I saw there was something there, and that it really whipped all around Hollywood very quickly, and everybody was buzzing about it. And every studio, it was like required reading. So that was the foundation. And then I worked on it over the years, adding more bits and pieces to this pattern that Campbell had described and translating it into the language of movies, because he wasn't thinking about movies at all. That was not his lookout.
Yeah. So a couple things, and this is sort of just like housekeeping. I think I read the original version, mythic structure for storytellers and screenwriters. I noticed now it's called mythic structure for writers. Just for people like me, is there any real substantial difference between the two versions?
I just think, we've gone out 4 times now. There's 4 editions, and each time I have first responded to, the impact and how it echoed back to me. Gotcha. Because I got on the road and I started traveling to Europe and bouncing it off different, went to Korea and different places and, bounced it off these other cultures and found the feedback was Hollywood's great. We love it. We're going to copy everything you guys do, but we have our own thing. And that was great for me to see that. So I sort of farmed and plowed all that back into the succeeding editions. And I also went deeper on some things and developed some other things that I thought needed to be in the toolkit, because in the original edition, it was really 2 big tools. One was the hero's journey with the 12 stages that I had arrived at, boiled down from about 16 that Campbell has, and then 8 archetypes. And so I added to that in the other things, important principles, like you need to know about polarity, that every story is polarized, every scene is polarized, every act or every piece of it, of the thing is is split somehow between competing forces. And that's where the drama comes from. So that's a whole discussion. Polarity. Catharsis, how you get people to cough up their emotions and wear them down and break them down until they can't resist you anymore, and they cry or they laugh, or you get the reaction that you want. So I kept digging.
So a couple things, and again, this is sort of I'm just always been curious about this. So this memo and the description you just described is exactly the description that you sort of hear around Hollywood. You did this 7-page memo at Disney. It got passed around and things. It got passed around, so you knew it had legs. But how did you go from a 7-page memo into a published book? Did you know publishers? Did you approach publishers? Like, what were those steps like? Actually turning this in from a 7-page memo that was being handed out for free to an actual book that was being sold?
Yeah, okay. This is great because I've never really kind of broken it down what those individual steps were. I think the progression was that I started teaching at UCLA Extension. And so I had a platform to develop the ideas a little bit more and try some things out. And I realized, okay, you need to add this and that to the full expression of it. But the real kickoff was I was invited to speak at a romance writer convention in Orange County. It was the Orange County branch of the RWA, the Romance Writers of America. And I went and spoke, and that was a great crowd for me. And I had a little pamphlet done up of about, by now it was about 10 pages. And I sold 150 of them, and came away with $1,000 and just, wow. And they ate it up, and they went to town with it, and you could see the impact of it in their writing. And they're sort of industrialized. They have to write a lot. They have to write fast, and it helped them to be more efficient. So I was I got a kick out of that, and that kind of triggered me to go a little deeper. And then an agent came and took my class and said, "This is a book. I see this as a book." So to your question, I prepared under her instructions. I prepared a proposal the way you're supposed to do. You put together your prospectus for why this book, and took it to New York and shopped it and got some interest, but it would always hit a ceiling where this is too much Campbell. We've already got some Campbell books. We already know all this. It's too Hollywood. It's too West Coast. It's too something. Too woo-woo, too out there. So I just hit a wall, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And then a blabbermouth friend of mine happened to be sitting on an exercise bike next to the publisher, Michael Weezy, who eventually did publish my book. And my big mouth friend said, "Oh, you're a publisher? Well, I have this friend who has this book. He's really, it's a great idea. And this guy had taken my class, and so he knew my stuff." And so Michael Weezy approached me, and that was the ticket. That was the lighting of the rocket ship that the book became. So he had the vision for it, and he said, "This is exactly what I'm looking for." And he was on the ground floor of sort of self-publishing and ministering to the creative community, especially independent filmmaking community. So my book fit in well for his brand.
Gotcha. You mentioned The Hero with 1,000 Faces. By this time, was Sid Field's screenplay out? Had that started to sort of get into some of your thinking?
Oh yeah, that was out there, and I saw Sid speak. I came to love that guy. It was a great man and wonderful spirit, spiritual guy, and I was aware of his stuff, and it just kind of stamped me. It was like, that's right. It endorsed what I was thinking. And I felt like it was a natural progression. He had laid out this sort of railroad track, and then I came and bent it around into a circle, is basically what happened. I took the Sid Field structure and made it a circle the way Campbell does. And it's exactly the same structure, but it has a different property when you see it that way, as a cycle.
I mean, It sounds like just the way your mind works, you're just constantly analyzing things. So by the time you read The Hero with a Thousand Faces, you already had a lot of this. You sort of thought through some of this stuff yourself. And I wonder, do you think you would have basically gotten to the same place without that book? Did you need that book to get to where you ultimately got, or do you think you would have eventually gotten there without it?
I think I might have gotten there without it. It certainly was a great booster. Again, it's punched my ticket and it endorsed my way of thinking. The way I saw it was I had already glimpsed a gigantic being, monster, dragon, whatever you want to call it, in the woods. But I could only see like a little of the head and one foot and a little of the tail. And so I knew stories have these certain patterns that they always kind of begin in a way where the hero's in trouble and does something nice so you like him. And, there were things that recurred. Mm-hmm. But Campbell had seen the same beasts in the forest, but I think he had a little higher view or better view of it. He was better educated than I, and was in the right place at the right time to really get it. And so it just made me go, okay, there's something there. There's something gigantic there. Let's try and describe it from where I'm standing, and that's how I feel about everybody else who gets excited about this stuff. You're telling your version of it from where you see it, where you're standing. And I can see from your, imprint and on your blog and so forth, that you have, an angle on it, and certain things that you've observed that are helpful to people. That's where I'm lit up is if I can help somebody, in their life too, not just in the movies.
Yeah. So one thing, Sid Field, Blake Snyder, yourself, one of the sort of the criticisms that you get is that it's too formulaic and that it sort of creates a template. And we've definitely all seen those movies that, it feels like they started at the wrong end. They started with your template and they tried to squeeze something into it as opposed to going the other direction. What is your response to that criticism?
Yeah, I just have come across this idea all over again that there is an organic way to grow a story. And when you work in the genre, you get off on the wrong track where you are trying to honor the things you think are supposed to be in that structure of that particular genre. But the trick is if you took all the genre elements out of it, the Western wouldn't have a cowboy and it wouldn't have a horse and it wouldn't have a gun and it wouldn't have a town and so forth. It would still be a good story. That's the idea behind this, I think, is that you want to try and build from the characters and their problems and their history rather than there's this great new device and it's going to revolutionize the whole society. And then we'll find some characters who will represent that, but that's the wrong way around. So, and it's hard, that's not an easy thing to set aside all that stuff for a while you think about who's this poor guy and what's his problem. And, and usually they go to, he ignores his daughter and he doesn't take her to the birthday party, or he doesn't show up when he's supposed to for the game or something like that. That kind of like check the box. But you hope you find something a little deeper or something from yourself, from your own life. That's probably where you're going to get the best of that kind of human material.
Yeah. So just how should this book fit in? Someone's a new screenwriter. They're just getting into this. How do you see your book sort of fitting into their education, and how should they use your book as they progress?
Yeah, I think this is a good introduction in a way. It's pretty relatively high level because there are a lot of books that are simpler and that talk to you more like, hey, buddy, look, you got to do this. And, if you want to get the audience, you got to grab them. That's sort of, and that's fine. And everybody needs that. And I got it in film school. We had teachers who were like that, who were just like, hey, you got to, knock the audience on their ass, man. And I'm glad I had that. But this is coming in a little bit more sophisticated level, but apparently it can be taught to kids. And they can get quite a lot out of the text, so it's not that threatening, but I think what would be great is to start with something like Sid Field, like Linda Seeger's books. My colleague Michael Haig has some really good books that look at both the psychological and the sort of structural problems you have. And then, if you want, go to this other level of mythology. Now, some people are already there, and so they look at this going, oh, yeah, I know all that. That really sounds right to me because they sort of grew up that way. But I think it does work well to build on top of something else, a more basic thing.
Gotcha. So are there some things in your book that maybe get overemphasized? And then the flip side of that, are there some things that you think are really important in your book that don't get talked about as much as maybe you think they should be?
Yeah, well, anything that's out there for a while, and that especially it's something that people have an affection for, or they like it, or it's popular in a way, there are going to be people who are gunning for that. If everybody likes it, I must be against it, is a school of criticism. So I get parked in a box as this is reductive. That's a term they like to use, the academics. This is watered down Campbell. The guy doesn't use any footnotes. It's not academic. It's all, he's generalizing all over the place.
Yeah.
And it puts the poor writer in a box. And I've run into that one from almost day one, that there is this resistance for some people that don't tell me how to do it. This comes out of the raw material of my soul. And they're not wrong. That's something that on the other side, where you're asking what isn't emphasized, it's that I just beat that to death. It's like, this is a great tool for you, but at some point throw the damn tool away and write from your guts and forget about all this stuff. It's a map that you consult before you set out on the journey, and that you check again if you get lost. And the rest of the time, you're freewheeling and you're on your own, and that's where the creative person should be.
Gotcha. So let's dig into some of this with archetypes. You list a whole bunch of them. Are there some films that just to start out, like with something like these archetypes, what happens if a story doesn't, have most of these or some of these? What can happen to the story? What do you see happening to story if they're sort of not getting some of these archetypes in there?
Well, it isn't very common that the archetypes aren't present somehow. I mean, it's kind of unusual when they are, but it's refreshing because we are sort of programmed to digest these things a certain way with certain condiments and additives, that we've come to like. But the one that seems to be the most fun to play with, to subtract it from the design, is the mentor. And I've been busted a lot by academics and critics who say, well, I see every hero has to have a mentor, this guy says. I don't, it's something that is very strong in the audience, that they expect somebody to be wiser and older, and they're looking around for a character to do that role, or be the bearer of the magic or whatever it is. But it's a really interesting design when you take that out, and there isn't anybody for the hero. And a great example of that was an Academy Award-winning film called Amour by a filmmaker, Michael Haneke, who's very edgy and makes you nervous kind of guy. And he made this story about two old people, and the wife is losing her mind and is slowly dying, but is causing all kind of problems. And the hero looks around, the husband looks around for a doctor or a relative or somebody, and you keep waiting. When is somebody going to come and help him? And that's the joke. There isn't anybody. He's completely alone with it. And that's horrifying. It really was a great love story and yet a horror story. at the same time, that position that guy was in.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one where I really went, okay, I see what happens when you take one of these pieces out. It makes a very interesting tension. I mean, because that's a general rule for all of these things that people complain I'm putting them in a cage or something. It is my basic rule is you have to know all this stuff. You have to know the patterns that people expect, especially in the genres, but you are obligated to break the pattern somehow in everything you do, and you could almost take it down to the level of every scene. And I love filmmakers who do that, who keep going around corners that I didn't see coming. I didn't even see the corner coming, let alone what's around the corners. So,
and clearly that example you gave, the writer acknowledges this mentor character, because it sounds like that was key to the entire story, was trying to find this mentor character. Clearly he understood that was like a human thing, a very natural human thing to do. So there was an acknowledgement, even though he didn't actually find it.
Yeah. That is the part where I feel these things are sort of baked in or built into the way we think. And so people who try to fight against structure or this kind of poetry that I think the mythological stuff is, they're really fighting a foolish fight, because all you can do is be against it, and say, no, instead of all this stream of stuff that's saying, yes, there is a pattern, and it's what we want. We want to be told that it means something. The life is meaningful. But that's, again, there should be room for the artists who say no, and you can even make commercial successes with stories that say, horror films, basically, that say, no, it's not like you think. There isn't any meaning.
And so let's dig into the stages of the journey, like we did there with the archetypes, because I think this is a little bit more where if you remove a key piece of the structure, the thing could start to buckle under the weight, as opposed to you could clearly have a story that didn't require all the archetypes. So talk about that a little bit. What happens if somebody misses, the refusal of the call? What happens in your story if you miss one of these things that you found to be integral to these stories?
Yeah, it's something I struggled with when we were working on Lion King, because I thought some pieces of that structure were technically in the wrong places, and yet you can't deny the success. It was at the time the most successful animated film ever made, and still, it was a record breaker. So they did something right.
Yeah.
Or we did something right, because I was part of that team and made my small contribution. But I criticized it, because some things I thought could have been a little better. That's all. It's just that.
And what's an example? Like, what's an example of where you thought the structure maybe was a little off?
Well, first of all, they introduced into the first act a really spooky place. And this was this sort of boneyard where the jackals lived, and where the young lion hero was in danger and threatened. And my just instinctive feeling was that belongs in the second act. That belongs deep into the story, and it was sort of the wrong color from my point of view for the first act. And there was a lot of other stuff going on there too. That was enough for me. And then the other thing was, in the middle of the story, they did a transition to show the aging of the lion, of the young lion Simba, that he went from he was walking across a log, and they just did a dissolve that showed him young cub, no mane, and then he's got the big lion mane, and it's a neat visual way to do it, and it makes a memorable image. But I just wanted more there. I just felt like that transition, there was something missing in him, even biologically, from the point of view of the African animals. He was with these comical characters who were great and very memorable, but they were telling him, we're going to live on bugs, and a lion cannot live on bugs, and he has to learn to hunt. And he would have encountered, I wanted him to encounter a hippo or a rhino or something, or be attacked by something. And eventually his old girlfriend shows up, and they have a tussle before they realize who they are. But again, I just wanted more there, and felt a little bit cheated, like they could have gotten another $50 million if they had done that little note.
Yeah.
So
you've spent a lifetime studying this stuff. You're as well versed in these archetypes at this point, probably as anybody on the planet Earth. Do you ever see a movie where you say, wow, that maybe there's an additional archetype? Is there ever anything that kind of surprises you? And will you have an example of that?
Oh, I'm enjoying this whole genre right now of sort of English teacup movies, that deal with, like Downton Abbey and the follow-ups of that, all these Julian Fellows shows that are coming out now. The Gilded Age is the American version of this, and I enjoy that because they carve off sort of pieces off the archetypes and really make a strong impression around certain ones, like the old granny who's conservative, and she represents the dying old ways, and she's kind of funny and so forth, and that's become kind of an archetype, and therefore something that you can play with, and you can reference it, and it becomes part of the language. So I enjoy picking up things like that.
And what about on structure too? Is there ever a movie you watch and say, wow, they did not follow any of this journey, this hero's journey stuff, but they did make it work? Are there any examples of that you run into?
Yeah, I like being confronted with something that's sort of chaotic and was designed with a different template completely. And yet almost always you can find some places where they're marching in step with this hero's journey pattern. The one that comes to mind is a very weird Japanese film called Hausu, or House. And it's a horror film about some girls who go to see, one of the girls has an aunt who lives out in the woods somewhere, and the aunt is a witch, and there's an enchanted cat and a piano that tries to eat you when you play it, and the teeth turn into teeth and try to chew you up, and it's semi-pornographic and completely surreal and doesn't follow any rules of logic, and it's absolutely wonderful. That's one where you try to put these tools on it, and well, they did leave and they went somewhere, and something happened. So you could match it up there. But other than that, it's up for grabs. And
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I just like to usually end these interviews by asking you, and we kind of covered this here just a little bit, but are there some things that you've seen recently, HBO, Netflix, Hulu, anything out that you thought, wow, this would be really great for screenwriters to really look at with a critical eye?
Well, one of the shows that we're enjoying is The Great, which is about Catherine the Great, and this follows the sort of fanciful version of her younger days. I just think it's a great modern model of how to have a look at history, and they're plucking things from the real story. And it's delightful if you know any history, because you can see, oh yeah, that really did happen. And there's that character, I read about him. But other than that, they don't care. They're just out to tell the funniest and wildest story they can. And so I'm just kind of hanging on for that ride. So that's one that really.
Gotcha. And where is that playing? Is that on?
That one, I believe I'm seeing that on Hulu. I think so. I have trouble,
Yeah. So do I. You're preaching to the choir on that.
Modern problems.
Yeah. So how can people find your book? It's available everywhere books are sold, Amazon, all that sort of stuff.
Yes, it is. It's not hard to find that one. And, if you want, you can even reach back and get the older editions. The earliest one is the sort of handiest because it's smaller. It got bigger as it went. And one other thing I did was I added illustrations to the later editions. I commissioned an artist to do beautiful illustrations, and they're just great things to meditate on. I'm going to do a set of cards, storytelling cards, based on that, and I think that'll be a nice thing for people to work with in their storytelling.
Are you teaching any seminars, webinars, anything coming up?
Yeah, every once in a while. There's nothing scheduled at this time, but I do keep up with a fair amount of that, and am enjoying this format. I like working this way. That's great for me. I miss the travel. I was traveling a lot to Europe, and 3, 4, 5 times a year, and that's gone. So I want to get back to that.
Yeah. And what's the best way for people to keep up with you? Website, Twitter, Facebook, anything you're comfortable sharing, I will round up for the show notes.
Yeah, best thing is for what's it called? WordPress.com. Yeah, it's Chris Vogler at WordPress.com.
Gotcha. And we'll get that. Yeah, we'll get that for the show notes. And it's your own blog, basically.
That's right. Yeah.
So, Perfect. Well, Chris, I really appreciate you taking some time out to come and talk with me. Fascinating interview. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, great. I love your energy. You got me all worked up, and I'm excited to go do something now.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you. Well, take it easy, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Nice talking to you. So long.
SYS's From Concept to Completion Screenwriting course is now available. Just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/screenwriting course. It will take you through every part of writing a screenplay, coming up with a concept, outlining, writing the opening pages, the first act, second act, third act, and then rewriting. And then there's even a module at the end on marketing your screenplay once it's polished and ready to be sent out. We're offering this course in 2 different versions. The first version, you get the course, plus you get 3 analyses from an SYS reader. You'll get 1 analysis on your outline, and then you'll get 2 analyses on your first draft of your screenplay. This is just our introductory price. You're getting 3 full analyses, which is actually the same price as our 3-pack analysis bundle. So you're essentially getting the course for free when you buy the 3 analyses that come with it. And to be clear, you're getting our full analysis with this package. The other version doesn't have the analysis, so you'll have to find some friends or colleagues who will do the feedback portion of the course with you. I'm letting SYS Select members do this version of the course for free. So if you're a member of SYS Select, you already have access to it. You also might consider that as an option. If you join SYS Select, you will get the course as part of that membership too. A big piece of this course is accountability. Once you start the course, you'll get an email every Sunday with that week's assignment. And if you don't complete it, we'll follow up with another reminder the next week. It's easy to pause the course if you need to take some time off, but as long as you're enrolled, you'll continue to get reminders for each section until it's completed. The objective of the course is to get you through it in 6 months so that you have a completed, polished screenplay ready to be sent out. So if you have an idea for a screenplay and you're having a hard time getting it done, this course might be exactly what you need. If this sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, just go to www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/screenwriting course. It's all one word, all lowercase. I will, of course, link to the course in the show notes, and I will put a link to the course on the homepage up in the right-hand sidebar. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing actor, writer, director, and producer Dan Koplin. He just wrote, directed, produced, and starred in a new feature film called 8 Wins. It's a sort of international spy espionage story, but it's still quite low budget. So we talk about this project a good bit, how he was able to get it all together, and specifically we talk about how you can write something and ultimately produce something that is low budget, but still feels like a big international spy film. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's our show. Thank you for listening.